Hi, welcome to today's webinar. I'm Ann Hambly, the founder and CEO of First Service Solutions, and we're going to talk today a lot about the office market. So,
I'm Douglas Scott, Senior Director of Workouts for First Service Solutions.
And you'll find that Douglas and I tend to finish each other's sentences all the time. So apologize for that ahead of time. We'll try to give each other a minute to talk.
Stephanie Whittington, SVP of Operations for First Service.
And really, Stephanie handles all the performing loans and handles all the transfer of ownership and extensions and all that on performing loans. So we'll get into that in a little bit. So let's start with, I thought what we're going to cover today is just a current status of the commercial real estate market with a focus on office, of course. And also we're going to get into, we're going to go through a case study of one that I think will address probably a lot of the issues. If you're an owner and you have an office building, you're probably facing some of these same challenges. So let's start out with just an overview of the market. So, and it's funny because no matter where you look to get this data, there's different numbers. So this one we got from the Federal Reserve. So I think this is correct, but we've got a total today. Well, I say today, this is the fourth quarter 22 of 5.6 trillion of commercial real estate debt. And I was shocked when I saw that number because the last I had looked at it a year ago, it was like 4 trillion at least. So it's grown a lot, and you'll notice that CMBS is actually a smaller subset. There was a time where CMBS was about 25% of the market. Now it's 11. Not a surprise. I mean, we know that it's not the first preferred product necessarily, but there's still a healthy amount. There's almost 600 billion of CMBS debt in commercial real estate. Let's talk about some of the market data points. And I think, Douglas, you've got you go ahead. Yeah.
As we know, with the inflation that we've all encountered since 2019 through COVID, inflation's been a problem, coupled with the Federal Reserve's decision and efforts to curb inflation by raising interest rates. Those two factors are really making it difficult for commercial real estate, as everyone knows. According to CBRE, cap rates have risen approximately 100 basis points in the past 12 months and across all property types. And that translates to a reduction in value between 10 and 15%
That's
over the
huge.
last year.
Jeez, yeah.
And then they forecast an additional cap rate expansion of 25 to 50 basis points, which translates to an additional 5 to 7% drop in value. So that's across all property types on a very general basis, but with the effects of rising rates, driving cap rates up, and inflation effects, both those factors are really making it difficult for commercial real estate owners.
I looked before the podcast here. I'm sorry. I do, monthly podcasts and weekly podcasts. Sorry. And I'm calling this a podcast, but before this webinar, I looked it up, and the last time inflation was this high, and it was 9%, was in 1981. So we are talking about a high inflation rate.
Yes, and we all know what happened after that.
Yeah. So, all right, next page is just about the office debt. Okay, so I think a lot of you might be surprised by this. I've heard a lot of people, every person we talk to lately says, "Oh my God, I bet you guys are swamped. There's so much going on in the office sector." And where I think things stand, which you'll see here, is that everybody's trying to figure out what to do when their loan matures, particularly, or when an event happens that causes them to need to.
Yep.
But the event may not be happening till 24 or 25. So people are looking ahead, and you aren't really seeing the problem in office in any of the delinquency numbers or anything yet. In fact, if you look at the chart on the left here, the delinquency rate by property type it was a little surprising to me when I saw it, but the number one highest delinquency rate is retail still. Number two is lodging. I think that's overhang from COVID, probably. I don't know. There's no fact behind that. This is my opinion, but yeah, it makes sense.
But office is still
Office is
relatively
still
low.
relatively low. It's the third highest, but it's only 2.38%. And office represents of the total CRE debt of 5.6 trillion, office is $750 billion worth of that. So there's $750 billion of office debt in the market. And we're going to have, I think all of those are going to have some problems at some point. I also wanted to point out some data or comments that were made by TREP, by somebody at TREP, and it says here, I do think there's going to be a lot of pain ahead for office. And it also says at the very end, which I think is so true, is that there's a lot of speculation around what will happen, not what is happening. So people aren't seeing or feeling the effects of it today, but they know it's coming. And so they're trying to prepare. So that's really where I think the market kind of stands. Now let's dive into the CMBS subset of commercial real estate. CMBS, again, is about a $600 billion market. Of that, and I hope this isn't getting confusing, but of the CMBS office, of CMBS total debt, office is 175 billion. And then of that, you can break this down many ways, but of that, there is a very small amount, 115 loans of office loans in special servicing. So you can see, again, it hasn't happened yet. These loans are not in default. They're not, for the most part, they're all performing-ish.
Right.
I'm going to do air quotes. I can do that on a webinar, but they're all kind of they look performing. We had one, in fact, the case study one that we're going to do. And when we first started touching it, it wasn't even on a watch list.
Correct.
So these for the most part look fine, but they're not, right?
Yeah, for a variety of factors, whether it be, the leasing market that particular property is in, interest rate environment, and or actual tenancy problems that have not risen to the top yet.
Right. And this is just loans in special servicing. So it's very possible that borrowers are just holding these deals up on their own and choosing to keep them current and keep coming out of pocket. So
that's right.
Yeah.
And I think your point about the tenants, I think that's what, we didn't have a slide on this, but I think from everybody I talked to, I think the hybrid work arrangement is just there.
Yeah.
And it's not going away.
It's regional. I mean,
Yeah.
some markets are impacted by that trend more than others.
Right.
But on a national basis, it's a real thing.
So if you look out and you've got a property and you've got major tenants expiring in the next couple years, and you've got your maturity a couple years away, you're probably sweating because you don't know what's going to happen with these tenants, nor are they willing to commit or talk about it right now either, right? They don't know what they're going to do. So it's just a vicious.
It's a very difficult
tornado.
Position to be in right
now.
Yeah. It really is.
So let's look at now of that, 175 billion in CMBS office debt. I've heard this said by about 5 people I've done podcasts with, so it's not just my opinion, but you've got a frozen capital markets for office. I know there might be something out there, but there's pretty much no debt available, new debt available to owners for office. And I think from everything we're hearing, about 50% of these office deals are probably underwater today, or will be. But if you think about it, if you had to sell it today, no, you probably wouldn't. But if you had to, or better yet, I ask people to think about if you were going to go buy it.
That's the way to look.
And of course, a lot of our borrowers say, "Well, I wouldn't do that," but just assume for a minute you were going to go buy it. What would you pay for it? Probably not what the debt is out on it. So that's the situation we're in. So there's a lot of maturities here. 60% of them mature in the next 4 years. Stephanie, since you handle the extensions, why don't you talk about what we're seeing in that market?
So back to the sales, and there really not being many. The first thing that we ask our clients is, as the maturity date is coming up, have you tried to sell? Have you tried to refinance? And of course, the answer is always yes. And the bulk of these clients aren't getting a single offer.
No.
So there is truly no option for them but to extend. And previously we would talk to clients about extensions being the last resort, lender of last resort. And here we are, this is their last resort. They're trying everything they
Yeah.
possibly can. So, usually they are able to secure an extension with the senior lender that's in place. And what we usually see is a 1-year extension with possibly the right to extend an additional year. There is some new skin in the game typically required. About 10% of the loan balance is usually quoted by the lenders as a contribution by the borrower. Could be reserves, it could be for use of the property. It could be an additional collateral reserve, but that's usually everybody's least wanted option.
Or you can pay down the
Or
debt,
you can
which
pay
you
down the debt.
normally
Yeah.
couldn't. Yeah.
And then, of course, there's a fee to the servicer of about 1% per year. So one year extension would be 1% fee to the servicer, about a 10% contribution, and then of course a couple of other fees while you're in service, while you're in special servicing fees, third-party reports and things like that. So they are getting done, and that's the good thing. It's a
to
possibility.
allow these markets
Yes.
to stabilize.
Yes, absolutely.
And live for another day.
And you're right. There was a point in time, maybe a couple of years ago, where you'd quote the extension costs like you just
Right.
did. And a lot of people would say, oh God, forget it. I'm going to go get a new loan.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that is what we encourage always. If you can get a new loan, that is always
Yes.
better. But in this market, you can't.
Right.
And
The
so,
cost of a new loan versus the
Yeah.
cost of extension.
Right.
Or,
Well,
you know,
and we have people coming to us now with like, let's say they had a 2.5% IO loan through maturity. They're calling and saying, can I extend? I mean, who cares if I can pay off or not? I want this loan longer. I always say it's kind of a funny story, but there was a time where, let's say we all three, well, wouldn't count for you probably, but let's say we're all at a dance, right? We're not the popular kid because we're in CMBS. There was a long period of time where we were like, oh, you're CMBS, right? Now you go to the dance and we're like, oh, now we love CMBS because it's non-recourse, low interest rate. No, we want to keep it. Your assumptions, even people are saying, wow, can I please assume the loan and keep my CMBS loan? We never thought we'd hear that.
It's an odd time in our world here because people do want to take
Yeah.
on these CMBS loans.
Right.
Assumptions are more popular,
Right.
extensions are popular, and we are having people call us up and say, well, I can get another
Yeah.
loan, or I can sell, maybe not for office, but other property types. Can I extend the loan that's in place? And that will be very interesting to see if that
Yeah.
becomes a true option for people.
So far, we
As we work
think
through
the
it.
answer is
We
yes.
think it's yes.
You can get an extension, but we
We've
don't
seen it done.
know.
I just
Yeah.
don't know a common answer. I
Right.
don't know what the usual is going
Right.
to be.
But when you can't get a new loan, you can get
Yes,
an extension.
absolutely.
Now, that doesn't work on a lot of deals because you're just kicking the can down the road and you know good and well that in a few years, it's still not going to
Yeah.
be worth anything. But there are plenty of times where getting another couple years to ride out the
Yes.
market will be the solution.
The
And
key,
that's,
the key is to show the lender that with that additional time, you can exit
that's right.
properly.
Exactly right. It doesn't work if we're showing in the next year, things get even worse.
No,
That's
right,
just
right.
not a solution.
And that might sound funny. That sounds counterintuitive. And I think a lot of CMBS is, but you do have to believe in your heart, I guess. And then you can reflect it in your projections
Yes.
that if time will cure the matter.
Right.
And,
That's right.
if it doesn't, then you wouldn't want an extension anyway.
Right.
And we're going to go through a case study. We have taken out all the names to protect the innocent. We don't want anyone to know what deal this is. So we've made it pretty generic. It's a real deal, a real situation, real solution, and it probably applies to a lot of office. So Douglas, you want to
Let's
walk
take
us
this.
through some of that? Yeah.
Right, so client with an office building it owns in California, about with debt on that property, CMBS debt about 250 million. A number of their major tenants had stopped paying rent, partly because of the work from home and the hybrid work situation. So they didn't want to pay for the space, and so they decided to stop paying. The ownership was not able to meet debt service requirements, and so we were transferred to special. with the drop in rent, obviously the value significantly impacted with that, the spot value. And the solution to move forward is a couple of solutions. One is to negotiate with that existing tenant. One is to replace that tenant or those tenants with new tenancy and new capital. What we were able to achieve were with the for the client was a reduction in their loan balance to
We'll go
either.
through here in a minute.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, and this loan matured in 24.
yeah.
And let me just give another view of the situation. So the owner is sitting here with a unstable tenant base.
Right.
If he replaces the tenants, a lot of capital,
It's going to require a lot. That's right.
over levered today
Mhm.
by 100%, right? Well, I
Yeah,
can't do the math,
it
but
is.
it was 100 million. The value is 100 million less than the debt. There's nobody that I know of in the planet that would want to put new capital above a highly over levered deal.
Correct.
So we had to find a solution that allowed for, give it an incentive
Mhm.
or return to the owner to put the money in, because you
That's
had to
right.
put the money in. And so that's how we,
Yeah, we were able, so again, we can go over the options that the three different options.
Yeah,
that
three,
were
yeah.
available is to modify the lease that's in place, or those tenants' leases, and then modify the loan accordingly to adapt to that lower rent level
Mhm.
and therefore less debt service available or less cash flow available for debt service. Another one is to sell the property, but it's going to be at a loss. So there's going to be a short sale. And the other one is just to hand the property back and lose, whatever investment they had in it.
Right.
So those are the different options that.
Those are really the only three options,
Yeah,
so.
So what we negotiated on behalf of the ownership with the lender was to modify the loan so that the debt service could be met at a modified, reduced level of loan balance, and commonly known as either a bifurcated loan or AB loan, and so that the cash flow, the new cash flow generated, the reduced cash flow could meet the debt service. The requirement to achieve that was the new capital to backfill the space that was going to be vacated, and that new investment by the ownership was treated as a preferred equity contribution that and we also were able to achieve an additional year's extension so that they could affect their business plan of backfilling that space. And then at the exit with this structure, the A note in this case would be repaid. Then the return of the capital with a preferred return of for the leasing capital they had to contribute, and then the excess proceeds were split to pay down the B note and split with the ownership.
And we have a page here where we have a couple, I don't want to go to it quite yet, but because there's a lot on that page. But the key here to finding the solution, in addition to what Douglas recapped, was finding a solution that gave the borrower a reason to put this new capital in.
Right.
So he had to not only get a preferred rate of return, which I think in here I think we got 15% rate of return on that new investment, but he also got an IRR on that investment.
That's correct.
And that's the only reason, number one, I think an owner would put new money in and stay in the deal, because it is non-recourse debt. You could hand it back.
That's right.
And it's also the best solution for the CMBS trust, because they don't have the loss today.
They don't have to recognize that loss
of that $150 million, which would have a huge impact. And this is one loan. When you go back to the 175 billion of office deals, can you imagine if everybody opted to just hand the property back and all these losses, arguably half of 175 billion, so 80 billion of losses hit CMBS, it would be,
it'd be devastating.
I can't even imagine. That would be so devastating. I can't even comprehend how it would
Yeah.
work. It wouldn't. So servicers will work with you. That's what we have found. And they've got to, it's in the best interest of the trust,
Mhm.
but you've got to have a structure that number one will work for you, your new money, and a structure that works best for the trust, the CMBS trust. And that's the key.
Right. With
Um,
this new capital investment and time, then with the time and with the new investment and the projections that are agreed upon and believed in, that there is a way to exit this investment and pay off the loan. And I think we'll see on the next page that there's a return of both the money the new money that's invested and a return on that money
Right.
that allows that new capital to get there.
Right. And sometimes the new capital can come from outside sources. There are a lot of people with a lot of capital raised that are looking to invest in deals. They don't necessarily need to be the owner. And so they could come in as a preferred equity solution for an office owner. That can also, and think if they're getting a 15% pref and maybe a small piece of your property at the end, there's probably plenty of capital sources that would do that. We know of many.
Yep.
So I think this is really probably the only, I can't comprehend. I've been in this business 40 years. I can't comprehend another structure that provides for the addition of new capital on an over-levered deal where it's in everybody's best interest. I mean,
Right.
so whatever we call it, I've had people say, oh, well, I talked to XYZ servicer and they said, we don't like AB structures. Well, okay, nobody does, right? But call it what you want, call it XYZ structure. The point is you have to find a way to let new capital come in above a right size debt and there be an incentive for everybody at the end.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it's going to get called, but don't let the title well, first of all, when you call a servicer and ask them if they'll do something, you're generally not going to hear, oh yeah, sure, they're not a partner with you. They're here to look out for the bondholders, and so they want everything they can get from you.
Mhm.
But and so on that note, let me say that one of the things we've been doing for a lot of owners over the past couple months is a borrower saying, I think that might be what I want to do, but I'm really debating. I don't know what to do. First of all, I don't know how to project my income and tenant changes over the next couple of years, because who knows, right? So we encourage people to do like a base case, a downside and upside, and then we model all those. But one of the things we're doing for a lot of owners is not embarking on a restructure,
Right.
but just providing them with the options, the factual options that will allow you to make a decision.
Right.
And that's just a 30-day period. It's an option analysis. You take it, we give you lots of good input, a good summary of everything, and then you have it as you decide what to do with your tenants, and maybe a year down the road it will be applicable, so
Right.
we're available to do that. This is just, this page it's too much to possibly, I would never normally put it in a slide deck. But let me just call your attention to a couple things here. This is just a summary of how this deal that we just talked about, how the various views or possibilities of restructure could work. So we modeled out various A notes, 132 million, 120, 108, you'll see there, a 10% contribution by owner, 9% exit cap rate. Now we ran it at 8, 9, 10, we ran various ones because who knows what the cap rate will be at that time. And what you see at the very bottom is the return to the borrower on this new investment.
Right.
Not original, but your new investment. So if you go to the $120 million, the second from the left column down, you'll see that the IRR to the owners 20 million. I'm sorry, 20%, excuse me. If you go to the $108 million A note, you see you get a 34% return. Okay, well, so a borrower is going to say, well, I want that one. I want 108, right? But what the servicer's doing is the exact same thing that we're doing here. In fact, our model is the servicer's model.
Correct.
And they're going to want you to do the 132 A note but that's only got a 5% return. So the negotiation is all between, the worst case, like this 132A to 108A note. And
Mhm.
there's lots of other things that you negotiate, but that's what this all boils down to. So just saying a bifurcation of the note and that working is a high level category of a modification. The real important part is, how do the numbers really look? What returns do you get to make it worth your while to invest money?
Correct, right. And this service that we provide at this level of for modeling different options allows our clients to go to their investment committee, to capital sources, and determine what would work for them.
Yeah.
Prior to ever speaking with the lender.
Right. So you're not
About a
incurring
solution.
you're not incurring any costs or anything.
Correct. It's
with the
purely
servicer.
option analysis.
Yeah.
To determine which direction they want to go. And then they will, typically within 30 to 60 days come back to us and engage for a full workout.
Yeah.
And at that point, we'll fine tune the numbers, prepare a proposal, and present it to the servicer.
Yeah. Or they'll come back and have made a decision now to strategically wait a year and do it in a year for other reasons.
Mhm.
And that's the whole purpose in this option analysis, is to, I can't imagine as an owner making a decision about my long-term, these are big numbers too, and
Yeah.
almost all of them we're seeing are really big numbers. So how can you make that kind of decision without knowing what you're going to need to contribute, what you get back on that, and some key points to this? I don't know how a decision is made without some of this information. And
Right.
and again, that's why we're offering this. So there's no obligation to take it and do anything with it.
That's correct.
But it helps
Yeah,
you make a
it's
decision.
It purely helps you make decisions, strategize.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so that's that. I think I just want to now, let's go to the last page, and I want to let you know our next webinar is June 6th. So please sign up for it. We try to always make these, I say interactive, but we don't script this. We try to just give you a bunch of good information. I think what we'll plan on next time is covering another case study, probably in office, because it'll be even more
Yeah,
that relevant then.
We'll have more traction or
Yeah.
more deals under our belt and some more success.
Yeah.
Workouts.
And probably more stress in office sector. So, unless a hotter topic comes up between now and June 6th, I think what we might do is just another one of these to some degree, and just with updated information and another case study. We're seeing a lot of really large office deals.
We currently have $3.5 billion of deals in our pipeline.
Yeah.
And the vast majority are office buildings.
Yeah, right. I know. And at first, when I did, thank you for bringing that up. I heard that number recently in one of our meetings, and I said, 3.5 billion, are you sure? And I looked at it. And so we have, 400, 200, 500 million office buildings. And they're large numbers and they add up quick. So
Right.
these are real challenging times for everybody. And I know you didn't need to hear that. Sarah, do we have any questions?
Yes.
Good. Can you read them? Yeah.
First question is, please clarify what you mean by the owner/borrower having to put in 10%. They
Oh,
have to
yeah.
pay off 10% of the loan balance.
Okay. That was a great question. In fact, we didn't cover that. So
Extension.
is
It's-
that, okay,
I think that's
let's,
related
for
to
an extension.
Yeah.
If it's related to an extension, that 10% is what a servicer or lender would quote you as what would be required. It's usually negotiable on the amount. And that 10% could be a variety of things. It could go towards pay down of the loan. It could go towards your reserve account. It could go towards other needs at the property. It's a contribution or new skin in the game.
We'll kind of help guide you on what the highest and best use of that money
Yes.
is. But know that you can't get I've never seen it up till now.
Mhm.
I've never seen you get an extension on a CMBS loan without some new skin in the game. So
Right.
Yeah.
if you came and said, I'd pay a 1% fee, but I'm not putting money in, you probably won't get an extension.
Right,
So
right.
just plan on 10%.
Mhm.
Like she said, sometimes we can get it negotiated down if you've got a really large loan.
If there's current reserves in place, that you're just supplementing those reserves and may not be up to 10% of the loan balance. But as long as it shows that with that extension,
You
the
could get
leasing
out.
requirements, yes, will help to pay off that loan at
Yeah.
the end of the term.
Yeah, so we'll help you kind of figure out what the best use of that is. And if you were talking about the 10% investment in the bifurcated note we just went through, that's again a rule of thumb. Depending on the size of loan, it can be less.
That's correct.
But that's really just, again, new skin in the game that's required. And it also can be used to pay down the debt, to add to reserves, to help with debt service shortfalls, whatever the
Right.
best use of that money is.
Correct.
And we'll help you model out various options. So if that didn't answer the question, please type one in again so we know.
We're happy to have a call too.
Or
we
we
can
can-
always get on the phone with you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you. That's actually what,
Yeah.
gosh, why did I not think of that? So our number in our website, and you'll see us on all three of us on our website. But reach out to us. I mean, we're talking general, and all these things are really specific per your
Yes.
deal. We
Right.
do free consultation calls all the time. You can reach out directly to Stephanie, Douglas, me. And we'll set up time with you. Even if you set it up with me, I'm probably going to have both of them on the call. We
Yeah,
usually are all
always
three on
together.
calls. Yeah.
Right.
So, but more heads, the better. So we all try to,
Yeah, feel free
Yeah.
to call. We're speaking with a lot of owners these days who have questions about what their options are,
Mhm.
and we're happy to go over effectively discuss again what the options are and what
For
we're
your
seeing out
loan.
there.
And
Right.
for your
Right,
loan,
for
your
specific-
pool,
that's
your
right.
special, there's
That's
a lot of
correct.
things that,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
matter, but
We got some more questions.
okay.
We haven't seen many servicers start to sell REO assets.
Mhm.
When do you think they'll start to capitulate? Do you think they're holding on just to get the servicing fees?
Boy, do I really have to answer that? Yeah, the answer to the last question is yes. Well, let me tell you what a servicer, so by the time, there are very few loans in special servicing right now. It's pretty low numbers. It's not at a
No,
high.
it's not like COVID for sure. I mean,
Yeah,
out of those
yeah.
days.
So there aren't that many that are going through foreclosure and getting foreclosed on and now being held and sold. The servicers have up to 3 years to hold a property after foreclosure before they have to sell. If I were them, and I have been in my life, I probably wouldn't be selling right now either.
Right.
I think they're going to wait for the market to stabilize. Again, they can't hold it longer than 3 years without getting another extension from the IRS for another 3 years for that property and that loan.
Mhm.
So, or that property, I should say. So I don't think there will be a lot of REO sales anytime in the near future. It's just not the right time to sell. And again, a lot of people think they foreclose and they turn around and sell. They don't, but they don't have
Not-
to. They
right.
can, but they generally don't.
Right.
So I think you're gonna see more servicers working with owners, that they will always do it if you know what terms to ask for and how to approach it. If you have capital you're looking to invest right now, I'd say there's many better ways to invest it than buying an REO property that's, but anyway, that's my 2 cents on that one.
Okay. My property services principal and interest, but later this year, based on contractual cash flows, will no longer meet the TILC sweep requirements. Will I then be in default?
Yes. And so we should talk about, I mean, that's one where I think a consult call would be very, very helpful, because you don't want to sound like right now, that would be one where I think there'd be no downside to talking. I think we should.
And it's an opportunity to evaluate if it's needed.
Yeah, that's a great point. I said, yes, you will be in default really quickly, and
But-
you will.
Yeah, you
But
will
there
be,
could be
and
a way to-
barring some kind of
Yeah.
discussion with the
Right,
lender.
right. So you definitely would want to call and have a
Yeah.
discussion with us, and then we can pull your deal, your special, your, circumstances and go through that with you. But yeah. And I guess kind of a rule of thumb is if you can, this didn't used to always be the case, and during COVID, it wasn't, of course, but the sooner you can get on top of any of this, the better. You don't want to always get transferred to special servicer right away, but if you know something's going to happen in the near future, for sure, let's talk about it sooner rather than later.
Right,
And then we'll
right.
guide you on timing. and
With your
stuff.
options.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Is the extension at the same interest rate?
Hmm.
And why would the lender not want a higher interest rate?
Yes, so all the terms stay the same on an extension. They don't change interest rate. The only thing that changes is the maturity date. And it's usually if you take more time to work through terms with the servicer than the time that you currently have on the loan, the maturity date is extended from the previous maturity date. So there's no lapse in time there. Why would they not want to change the interest rate? I think it's just a matter of can and cannot. It's not a matter of want. The interest rate is there and it's set. Now, back to the fees, that's where they could build in, that gap or make up for interest
Yeah.
rate that could have been earned elsewhere. And there could be a default interest accruing or certain fees due to the servicer.
Yeah, but she's absolutely, they can't change your rate and they
Yes.
can't make it recourse. There's a lot of things
Right.
you can't do. And also, if they did change the rate, you have to remodel all the bonds. The bondholders now would not get what they planned on it. It
Correct.
would just be a mess and it's not worth it. That's why even in these bifurcations that we talked about, when you're bifurcating the loan, all the terms stay the same too. You're just cutting the loan size temporarily. So really your terms should always kind of stay the same
Right.
on a
You can
CMBS loan
rely on that.
for the bondholder purposes. Yeah.
Mhm.
Is the underwriting redone when doing a workout basing real-time current NOI, adjusting, leasing, etc.? Why would the owner put in more capital if it's so underwater?
Great question. And that
Yeah.
is a question we get every day by everybody. Yes, they do. It's basically when you're in a workout situation, everything is re-looked at and reanalyzed. And what is the right size of this debt? An owner would not probably want to put money in. This is the answer. Let's say you have $100 million loan and the property value today is 80. Let's just use it. Would anybody put new money in above that? No. Above 100? No. But would you put new money in if the debt was $10? Of course so.
Sure.
So the point is, there is a point in which you would probably be incentivized to put money in. And that's the key, is to figure out, okay, what debt amount would you put new money in over?
Mhm.
And if you get a good return on that money, would you want to? And there's people that say, no, I don't want
Yeah,
to,
I
I'm
don't-
done.
Right. I don't believe in the property. I
Yeah.
don't believe in the
That's
market.
an option.
But
That's an
it
option.
is. And that's the great thing about this loan product.
Yeah,
That
you
you
can
can
hand the
hand it back.
property back,
That's
right?
But
always an option.
But if you believe in the investment, in the product, in the market, and you believe that you can add value, you can increase the value with some more time with that money, then it would make sense.
Or if it helps you start to get back even your original investment, which
That's
you would
right.
have lost otherwise.
That's
So,
right. That's right.
yeah.
What about LTV?
What about it? Hmm.
Well,
Pretty much.
there's a great example of that with I think it's an assumption you're working on where it's
Yeah, but let's back up. Hang
Okay,
on, sorry,
yeah,
just
yeah.
a minute. So in these situations we talked about
it's all
today,
negative, yeah.
I would say LTV is irrelevant.
It is.
You could be 100% LTV and still get an extension.
Yeah.
You could be 200% LTV and get a workout. That's the whole purpose of the workout. Douglas is right. During a performing loan assumption, it certainly comes into play, but let's
Yes,
leave
but that's
that.
a
That's a
different
different
topic.
That's a
subject.
great point, yeah, it's a
So for
different
this
conversation.
webinar,
right.
LTV
It's
doesn't
irrelevant.
matter.
Right.
Yeah.
It is.
See why we have three of us always.
How are office tenants impacted positively and or negatively by the challenges that landlords are facing in today's environment?
Well, I'll speak to that. So as an office building is stressed, we can all imagine that the quality of service to that building, the services provided to the tenants could be reduced, and maybe less capital available to make repairs. We have one client where they're struggling to make certain capital improvements because their cash flows are so poor. So it's a huge impact when there's less rent coming in because of fewer tenants or otherwise, it's just, it makes the whole situation much more difficult.
Yeah.
It's just the way it
That's a
works.
great way to, yeah, yeah.
Do servicers typically release trapped cash if it is to go towards accretive leasing? Accretive?
Yes, accretive. No, you're right.
Okay.
Yes, they can. If you're doing a workout, that's easily and will be part of the equation.
Mhm.
If it's you're performing and you're not maturing and life is just great and normal, you got to make a special request and it's
Yes.
not as easy to
No.
do it then. Okay. If you're doing an extension, it absolutely could be used.
100%.
Mhm.
So I hate to answer it as it depends, but it really does depend on how and when you need it.
Right.
Yep.
But it can always, when you're in a potential workout solution, all bets are off and all money in reserve can be used for anything else.
Mhm.
And all, I'm not saying the servicer would tell you that and you can just use it however you want. But what we help with in the modification is use of all that money that's sitting there, because
Right.
it does help solve
Put
the
it to
problem.
work.
Put it to work. Yeah.
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 And last question as of right now, what are the income tax implications for the owner if they turn in the keys? How is this impacting owners' decisions?
Well, I think we have to say that, and I hate to do this,
Yeah.
but we're not tax experts, and since it's non-recourse debt, the most I know about this, and I've heard it enough now that because it's non-recourse debt, it just depends on your basis in the
It's really
property.
a basis question.
It's really an accounting attorney, your legal tax attorney, I'm sorry, is really the one that has to answer that. So I think we have to stay away.
And if
We're
you
not-
have if
Yeah.
any of you have questions about that, feel free to call. We have resources we
Yeah.
can provide
Yeah,
or
we can
refer
connect
you
you.
to. Correct.
It's just not our expertise, and I don't.
Right.
We don't,
Right.
as we used to have a good employee who said, I don't even play a tax accountant on TV. I have no experience. I didn't sleep at a Holiday Inn.
But it's a good-
Yeah.
It's a very important question.
Yeah, it
that-
is.
That is part of the consideration in your decision making.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
please do reach out.
Yeah.
And we can refer you.
Yeah, and the question too was, and how does that play into your decision? Should absolutely play
Yeah.
in, because
yeah,
boy,
it's a
we
very
wouldn't want to be surprised by
a tax
we
bill.
had in the 2008 downturn, we had a owner that had a mall that was like, I don't know, 120 million or something. And there was like 40 or 50 million of capital needed. Property value was, 25 or 30 million. It was way underwater.
Mhm.
And we eventually had to turn it in because we couldn't get the servicer to agree to a deal. And then the biggest concern from the borrower was, oh my God, now I'm going to have a tax hit for the difference between 25 million and 120 million. I'll have $100 million tax hit. So we worked out something with them where it was and I couldn't even explain it today. We remember it was there was a way to get it done where you could avoid the tax hit. But the point is, don't do something without understanding the
Yeah,
tax
that's right.
implications.
It's a very important.
Very
step in
important
the
point.
process.
We're just not the experts in that. So any other questions?
No?
Good. Well, again, I think so June 6th, sign up for the webinar, if you will. And if you have questions that you'd like us to cover at the June 6th specifically,
Oh, that's great.
shoot them to, where should they, do we have any emails on here that, you probably shoot them to,
I send out stuff after.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Send them to Sarah and Sarah will collect them. You guys don't see Sarah, but she's behind the scenes here, one of those, like the producer of all our stuff behind the scenes, and is really the mastermind behind a lot of this. So I just send it to Sarah and then we'll cover that because we're trying to think of what's relevant to you at all times. So
Right.
good.
Feel free to
Yeah.
call us and thank you for taking the time to visit with us.
Yes, thank you.